My name is Victoria Sharapova, 33 years old, and at my own wedding, my mother-in-law whispered that my fiancé was sleeping with my maid of honor. I could still feel the lace of my veil scratching against the back of my neck when my future mother-in-law leaned in, her perfume stifling. Her smile carved too perfectly for anyone else to suspect the venom she was about to release. "Victoria," she whispered, her lips brushing my ear as if she were blessing me. "Your fiancé has been sleeping with your maid of honor. For months." My stomach clenched like a fist. For a split second, I couldn't tell if she was serious or if this was another one of her cruel games. Elena Sharapova, a woman who wore pearls like armor and compliments like poisoned darts. She knew exactly when to strike. And she had chosen now, minutes before I walked down the aisle in front of 200 guests, to deliver a whisper designed to shatter me. I forced a smile, every muscle in my face trembling with the effort. The string quartet played softly in the background. The chatter of friends and family blurred into static. She pulled away just enough to look at me, her eyes sharp, testing, as if waiting for me to crack right here in the little room off the church vestibule. I wanted to tell myself she was lying, that it was another way to prove I wasn't worthy of her son. But the way she said it, too calm, too certain. And then I remembered the way Daniel and Anna, my maid of honor, my best friend since college, had glanced at each other during the rehearsal dinner. Quick, fleeting, but weighted. I'd brushed it off as nothing. But now, Elena's whisper rewound that moment in my mind and painted it in a whole new light. The organist's first notes rang out. My father's voice was suddenly in the doorway, steady but urgent. "They're ready for us, Victoria." I turned toward him, bouquet trembling in my grip. My mouth was dry, my throat closing. Across the room, Elena adjusted her gloves, serene, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my chest. She didn't need to say another word. The seed was planted, and she knew it would spread like wildfire. I took my father's arm, but the sanctuary blurred in front of me. My pulse thundered against the silk bodice of my gown. 200 eyes waiting. A groom standing at the altar, smiling like he owned the world. And next to him, Anna, radiant, beaming. The picture of loyalty and friendship. My heels tapped the stone aisle like a countdown. Step after step, I searched his face, hers, looking for cracks. A guilty flinch, an accidental glance. But their performance was flawless. His gaze locked on me with practiced devotion, her smile wide and unshakable. Maybe Elena was lying. Maybe she wanted me to doubt, to humiliate myself in front of everyone by overreacting. That's what she'd love most. Me unraveling in public, confirming I was never good enough for her son. But then, as the vows began, I saw it. A shadow. Just for a heartbeat. When Daniel reached for my hand, his eyes flicked toward Anna. Instinctive, unconscious, the kind of reflex that betrays months of secrecy. And Anna's lips parted, ever so slightly, before she quickly looked down at her bouquet. The church was hot, the air too thick to breathe. My chest constricted. The words, "to have and to hold," were an echo chamber of lies. I repeated the vows, my voice steady only because rage held it in place. I kissed him with an audience roaring approval, but all I could taste was betrayal masked in champagne sweetness. The applause faded into the clinking of glasses at the reception. Chandeliers glimmered, cameras flashed, laughter spilled from every corner of the ballroom. And still, Elena's whisper coiled tighter around me like a serpent. I watched him dance with Anna. Too long, too comfortable, too familiar. My vision tunneled, the betrayal sharpening into focus. Every compliment Anna had given about Daniel, every late-night study session years ago, every toast she raised in our honor, all of it reframed now as a performance. And suddenly, I wasn't the one being humiliated. They were. They just didn't know it yet. Because while they danced, oblivious, a plan began to form behind my smile. The music swelled. Glasses lifted in toasts. The microphone waited at the edge of the stage for the bride's speech. And when I stepped toward it, every eye turning my way, I knew exactly what I was about to do. Before the wedding day, before Elena's venomous whisper poisoned every vow, my world looked picture perfect. Or at least that's what I convinced myself. I was 33, established in my career, living in a high-rise condo in Chicago with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Lake Michigan. Every morning, Daniel would bring me coffee before I left for work, sliding the cup onto my nightstand with a grin. "Fuel for my future wife," he'd say, and I'd melt, believing him. Daniel was charming in that effortless way lawyers often are. Polished, confident, always with the right words. He worked at a prestigious firm downtown, his name already whispered in conversations about the next rising star. To the outside world, we were unstoppable. The lawyer and the marketing director, the power couple everyone else wanted to be. And then there was Anna, my maid of honor, my best friend since our Northwestern days, when we'd shared textbooks, cheap wine, and heartbreaks. She had this infectious laugh that made even the worst days feel bearable. We'd joked for years that she'd stand beside me on my wedding day, and when Daniel proposed, there was no hesitation. It had to be her. The three of us formed what looked like an easy triangle. Anna came to dinner often, joined us for weekend brunches, even tagged along on spontaneous trips up to Lake Geneva. It never struck me as strange. She was family. She was safe. And then there was Elena, the mother-in-law every woman prays not to have. Sharp-tongued, immaculately dressed, her approval always just out of reach. From the beginning, she looked at me as if I were a project to critique, not a woman her son loved. At engagement parties, she'd smile for photos while whispering little barbs only I could hear. "You'll learn to manage Daniel better once you're married." Or, "That dress is lovely, but perhaps a different cut would flatter you more." Always disguised as advice, always laced with control. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. Daniel loved me. That's what counted. Our routines felt solid. Friday night dinners with his colleagues, Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Sundays spent planning the wedding, cake tastings, venue visits, late-night Pinterest scrolling on the couch with Anna helping me decide between ivory and champagne-colored linens. It all looked so perfect that I ignored the small shadows flickering at the edges. Like the time I walked into the kitchen late one night and found Daniel and Anna laughing over a bottle of wine, their conversation halting the moment I appeared. He brushed it off. "We were just talking about old college stories, Vic. You wouldn't care." I let it slide, telling myself it was nothing. Or the time Elena called me after one of our fittings, her voice sweet as syrup. "I worry you're too distracted with your career, dear. Daniel needs someone who can prioritize family above all else. Men like him need caretaking." Her words left a bruise I carried silently, but I told myself she was just protective. And yet, there were beautiful moments too. Moments that made me believe everything was solid. Daniel slipping an arm around me during a snowfall on Michigan Avenue. Anna cheering louder than anyone when I landed a big promotion. Even Elena, raising her glass during an engagement dinner, saying, "To Victoria, who's about to make our family whole." I wanted to believe it. I needed to. Because I had dreams stitched into that future. A home outside the city, children running barefoot through the grass, dinner tables filled with laughter and clinking glasses. I believed Daniel was the man who'd stand by me through all of it, and Anna the friend who'd always keep me grounded. The truth was, the foundations were already cracking. I just refused to see it. The red flag moment came one evening, about a month before the wedding. We were sitting at a small restaurant in River North, me, Daniel, and Anna, celebrating Anna's birthday. The candles flickered low, the waiter pouring another round of wine. Anna leaned over the table, teasing Daniel about his taste in music. He laughed, reaching across playfully to grab her wrist in mock protest. It was quick, casual, but his hand lingered just a second too long. Their eyes met, holding in a way that made my chest tighten. I looked away, forcing a laugh, brushing it off as old friends joking. But that moment stuck with me. The image of his hand on hers, the quiet electricity between them. It was nothing, I told myself, just my imagination, just the stress of wedding planning. But deep down, in a place I buried under champagne toasts and floral arrangements, I knew it was the start of something I'd later recognize as the end. The whisper haunted me for days after the wedding. I replayed it every time Daniel kissed my forehead, every time Anna texted a heart emoji in our group chat, every time Elena called me dear in that clipped, condescending tone. I wanted so badly to believe Elena had lied, that this was just another one of her games, her power play to make me insecure and pliable. I convinced myself that the flicker of guilt I'd seen between Daniel and Anna was in my head. But the seed had been planted, and once a seed is planted, it grows. 3 weeks after the ceremony, I got my answer. It was a Tuesday night. Daniel had told me he was working late, another trial prep session with his partners. I believed him, because that's what wives do. But something about his tone had felt rehearsed, like he was reciting lines rather than speaking to me. So I went for a walk. That's what I told myself. A walk down Michigan Avenue, past the glittering shop windows and the hum of the city. But my feet didn't take me home. They took me toward his office tower. The lights on the 20th floor were on, the ones I knew belonged to his firm. But when I texted him, "Still working? Want me to bring you something to eat?" The response came 15 minutes later. "Heading home soon. Don't wait up." That's when I knew. I walked into the lobby, my heels clicking like gunfire against the marble. The security guard nodded, too used to seeing spouses drop in. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding louder with each floor. The glass-walled conference room came into view as the elevator doors opened. And there they were, Daniel, Anna. Not with files or laptops, not with pens or contracts. With each other. Her hand tangled in his tie, his fingers digging into her waist, their mouths fused in a kiss so desperate it made my stomach lurch. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, my body betrayed me. Frozen, paralyzed, like my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Anna was supposed to be my sister. The girl who'd held my hand through heartbreaks, who'd slept on my couch when she couldn't pay rent, who'd stood beside me on my wedding day with tears in her eyes. And Daniel, the man who swore vows to me in front of God and everyone we loved. They pulled apart when they noticed me. The look on Daniel's face, wide-eyed, pale, caught, was confirmation enough. And Anna, she had the audacity to straighten her blouse and murmur, "Victoria, this isn't what it looks like." That line. That pathetic, insulting line. I laughed, sharp, brittle. "Then by all means, enlighten me, Anna, because it looks like my husband and my best friend are screwing in his office while I plan our future." Daniel stepped forward, hands raised like I was a hostage negotiation. "Vic, please. We didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't mean for this to happen." Those words cut deeper than the kiss. They weren't denying it. They weren't even apologizing. They were minimizing it, reducing my world to a mistake, a slip, a little accident they didn't mean. But the way they looked at each other, the way their bodies moved with a practiced rhythm, the way guilt didn't even flicker long enough before annoyance set in, that's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This was months, maybe longer. Calculated lies, coordinated betrayals. My wedding vows had been a performance staged to perfection, while the two of them had rehearsed a script in the shadows. My grief twisted into rage so sharp it made my vision blur. "You didn't mean for this to happen?" My voice was ice. "Tell me, when you were sneaking into each other's beds, was that an accident too? When you held her hand during my dress fitting? When you danced with her at our reception like I was invisible? Was that just another little slip?" Anna flinched, her lips pressed tight. Daniel reached for me, but I stepped back, my body recoiling as if his touch would burn me. I could have screamed. I could have thrown something, but the silence that stretched between us was louder, heavier, more suffocating. I walked out, not because I was weak, but because staying would have given them the satisfaction of seeing me shatter. The city blurred as I stepped into the night. Neon lights, car horns, the buzz of life around me, all of it muffled by the roaring in my ears. My hands shook as I flagged a cab, my throat raw with unshed screams. Back in my condo, I sat in the dark. The veil from my wedding day still hung on the back of a chair, delicate and white and mocking. My phone buzzed. Daniel calling. Then Anna. Then Daniel again. I didn't answer. I replayed every moment, every laugh, every toast, every late-night excuse of working late. The puzzle pieces clicked together into a picture I hadn't wanted to see. And then came the realization that made me tremble not with grief, but with fury. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had humiliated me. In front of my family. In front of his. On my wedding day, while Anna smiled beside me in a gown she'd helped me pick, she was already sharing his bed. It wasn't just an affair. It was a performance. A cruel, deliberate play staged in front of everyone I loved. And as I sat there, staring out over the glittering Chicago skyline, the tears finally drying on my cheeks, a thought crystallized. If they wanted to make me a fool in public, then their punishment would have to be public too. They thought they'd broken me. They thought their secret was safe. But I wasn't broken. I was planning. And when I was finished, their betrayal wouldn't just be exposed. It would destroy them. The night after I caught them in the office, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my body heavy but my mind sharper than it had ever been. Grief had burned itself out. What remained was something colder, something cleaner. Resolve. By sunrise, when Daniel walked through the door, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled from whatever pathetic excuses he'd been spinning with Anna, I was ready. "Victoria," he began, his voice hoarse, practiced. "We need to talk." I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I poured myself coffee, sat at the kitchen island, and looked at him like he was a client I was about to annihilate in negotiations. He shifted under my silence. "I made a mistake. We made a mistake. But it doesn't change how I feel about you." That word again, mistake. As if betrayal was nothing more than spilling a drink on the rug. "Sit," I said, my tone flat. He obeyed. That's the thing about Daniel. He was used to controlling juries, not me. And for the first time I realized he didn't know how to handle my stillness. He launched into excuses, his voice trembling at the edges. "It just happened, Vic. You and I were planning the wedding. Everything was so stressful, and Anna was convenient." I cut him off. "Accessible? Disposable?" His jaw tightened. "No, it wasn't like that." I let him squirm. Every lie he told only confirmed the truth. He wasn't sorry. He was sorry he'd been caught. He thought if he spun the narrative carefully enough, I'd forgive him, sweep it under the rug, and let the facade of our perfect marriage continue. That was the moment I decided. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to destroy. I let him believe I might relent. I nodded at the right times, softened my tone, even reached out to touch his hand once, just enough to give him hope. Inside, though, I was already stripping him down in my mind, piece by piece. Because Daniel's arrogance wasn't just his flaw, it was my weapon. He underestimated me. They all did. Later that week, Anna came by. She had the audacity to stand in my living room, her voice syrupy, her eyes wide as if rehearsing for sympathy. "Victoria, please. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Daniel and we didn't mean to hurt you." I studied her like a specimen under glass. My best friend, my maid of honor. The woman who had toasted me with champagne while secretly climbing into my husband's bed. I asked her one question. When did it start? Her lips parted. She hesitated, then whispered, Last summer, months before the wedding, months before the dress fittings, the bachelorette party, the vows." I smiled. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it froze her. "Thank you for being honest." She left thinking I might one day forgive her. That was her mistake. Elena, of course, never apologized. She called 2 days later, her voice smooth and cold. "Now, dear, don't let this spiral. A woman's role is to keep her marriage together no matter what. If you play this correctly, no one else ever needs to know. No one else ever needs to know. That was the exact moment I realized how deep the rot went. Elena hadn't just known, she'd approved. Perhaps even orchestrated. To her, I wasn't a daughter-in-law. I was an accessory, a prop. Replaceable. But she had given me a gift without realizing it. By underestimating me, she'd cleared the path. Because what none of them understood was that I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to throw plates or run out crying. No, I was going to wait, watch, plan. And when I moved, it would be silent and surgical. Over the next weeks, I began collecting, quietly, methodically, passwords I already knew, emails I could access with ease, bank records left open on Daniel's laptop. He trusted me, foolishly. And that trust became my arsenal. I didn't lash out. I didn't accuse again. Instead, I smiled at dinners, held his hand at family gatherings, even laughed at his jokes in front of colleagues. Anna relaxed around me. Daniel believed the storm had passed. Elena thought she'd reestablished control. None of them saw the ice in my veins. I kept rehearsing one thought, over and over. If they wanted a performance, then I would give them one. And when the curtain fell, it wouldn't be me left in ruins. It would be them. Patience became my weapon. If grief had burned me hollow, patience filled the emptiness with something sharper, steadier. I learned quickly that rage, raw and loud, was dangerous. It gave too much away. But silence was survival. Silence was power. So I played the part. At dinners, I laughed at Daniel's stories. I let my hand rest on his arm like nothing had changed. When Anna called, I picked up with warmth in my voice, the tone of the best friend she thought I still was. Even Elena, smug in her pearls, commented one afternoon, "I'm proud of you, dear. Not every woman has the strength to rise above." She had no idea. While they believed I was healing, I was planning. Daniel's carelessness was legendary. His arrogance made him sloppy, and sloppiness made my job easy. His laptop was always open. His email never logged out. All I needed was the discipline to wait for the right moments. At first, I took small risks. When he showered, I'd slip into his office, fingers trembling only until I found what I needed. His firm's billing records revealed entire days where he'd charged clients but hadn't been at the office. The dates matched hotel reservations with Anna's name as the guest contact. The hypocrisy almost made me laugh. Daniel, the man who preached integrity to juries, was padding his hours while cheating on his wife with her best friend. I forwarded everything to a secret account I'd set up under an alias. Each file I sent was a nail in the coffin, but not yet the finishing blow. Anna was easier. Her vanity was her weakness. She had a habit of oversharing on social media. Inside jokes, cryptic captions, posts that seemed harmless until paired with Daniel's schedule. Another late night at the office, she'd posted once, tagged at a cocktail bar a block away from Daniel's building. The timestamps lined up perfectly with his trial prep excuses. Piece by piece, I built the mosaic of their betrayal. One night, Daniel came home earlier than expected. I was at the kitchen table, his laptop open in front of me, scrolling through a file labeled Expenses 2022. Inside were PDF statements that made my pulse quicken. Thousands spent on business dinners that were really weekends away with Anna. The sound of the front door unlocking jolted me. "Vic!" His voice carried down the hall. My heart leapt into my throat. I snapped the laptop shut and slid it an inch forward just as he appeared, jacket over his shoulder, hair wind-blown. His eyes flicked to the laptop, then to me. "What are you doing?" I forced a smile, holding up my phone. "Looking for recipes. Thought I'd try making pasta for once instead of ordering Thai again." His suspicion lingered for a beat too long. Then he chuckled, kissed my forehead, and muttered, "Good luck with that." Before disappearing into the bedroom, I exhaled slowly, the adrenaline shaking my hands. 1 second longer, and I might have been caught. But the near miss only sharpened my resolve. Pretending became second nature. I let Daniel believe he was winning me back. I let Anna believe I might forgive her. I let Elena believe her family's dirty secret was buried. They mistook my silence for weakness. They mistook my stillness for surrender. But inside, I was building a machine. Every word they spoke, every look they shared, every careless mistake they made. I logged it, stored it, weaponized it. Daniel told me one night, "I'm glad you're not like other women, Vic. You don't hold grudges." I almost laughed in his face. Instead, I kissed his cheek and murmured, "That's why you married me." It wasn't enough to expose their affair. If all I did was reveal them, I'd be painted as the bitter wife, the jealous friend. No. The punishment had to be bigger. It had to strike where it hurt most. For Daniel, that meant his career. His father had built him up as the golden boy of the firm. A scandal would ruin him, not just personally, but professionally, leaving him blacklisted in Chicago's legal circles. For Anna, it was her reputation. She'd spent years cultivating her image as the loyal friend, the woman everyone could trust. When the truth came out, that mask would shatter. For Elena, it was control. She lived for appearances, for the illusion of the perfect family. When the facade collapsed in public, she'd have to choke on her own humiliation. I began weaving the threads. At networking events, I asked subtle questions about Daniel's cases, storing away the details he bragged about. At brunches with Anna, I let her overshare, pretending to listen while memorizing every slip she made. Elena even bragged once over martinis that her son would make partner before 40. I smiled politely, all while picturing her face when I tore that dream apart. The riskiest moment came when Anna dropped by unannounced. I was in Daniel's office again, this time digging through his desk drawers for financial records. I found what I'd been searching for, a hidden folder of bank statements showing money siphoned into a joint account under a fake name, their love nest. The doorbell rang. I nearly choked on my heartbeat. "Vic, it's me!" Anna's voice carried through the door. I stuffed the folder back, slammed the drawer, and hurried out, smoothing my hair as if I'd just been reading on the couch. When I opened the door, Anna stood there with takeout bags. "Surprise girls' night. Daniel said he was working late." I forced a laugh. "Perfect timing. I could use the company." She prattled on about dumplings while I poured wine, pretending to listen, my mind still racing. If she had walked in 2 minutes earlier, she would have found me with the evidence in my hands. The close call only proved I was on the right track. Weeks of collecting turned into months. By the time spring came, I had a vault of ammunition: emails, photos, billing fraud, financial misconduct, and enough text messages to script their entire affair. The plan took shape like a puzzle finally snapping into place. I wouldn't just tell the truth. I would show it. I would let them believe they were safe, right until the moment the floor collapsed beneath their feet. The idea struck me at one of Elena's galas. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, glasses clinking, her voice commanding attention as she boasted about her family's achievements. That was when it hit me. The stage was already built. The perfect setting wasn't some private confrontation. It was public. It was grand. It was undeniable. The revenge wouldn't be whispered. It would be projected. I walked out of that gala smiling, my heels clicking like a countdown. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt alive. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was ready. I chose Elena's annual charity gala. It was perfect. Not just because of the glittering chandeliers, the photographers, the hundreds of Chicago's most influential attendees, but because Elena had planned it as her grand stage. She'd bragged for weeks about how this event would cement the Sharapova legacy. I intended to do just that, but not the way she imagined. When the night arrived, I wore a gown of midnight silk. My hair was pinned high, my lipstick red, my expression serene. To anyone watching, I was the picture of elegance, the loyal wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law. Inside, I was a live wire. Daniel escorted me in, his hand at the small of my back like he owned me. Anna followed close behind, dazzling in emerald satin, laughing as though guilt didn't weigh down her lungs. Elena stood at the entrance, greeting donors, her pearls catching the light, her pride radiating like a spotlight. They believed the performance was theirs. They didn't know the stage was mine. Dinner was served beneath cascading crystal chandeliers. Glasses clinked. Conversations buzzed. Elena rose for her opening speech, thanking patrons for their generosity. Cameras flashed as she gestured toward her son, our future partner at the firm, and to me, the strength behind him. My jaw tightened, but I smiled. Let her bask. She had no idea she was about to be stripped bare. When the applause faded, I stood. My heels echoed across the marble as I stepped toward the microphone. "Good evening," I began, my voice calm, measured. "I want to thank Elena for inviting me to speak tonight. She often says appearances matter most. And tonight, I'd like to talk about appearances and what's hidden behind them." The room hushed. Elena's smile faltered. I pulled a small remote from my clutch. The ballroom wall behind me, draped with white fabric, flickered to life with the projector. The first slide appeared, a text message. "Daniel, can't wait to feel you tonight. She'll never know. Anna, already missing you. Don't be late." Gasps rippled across the tables. Forks clattered onto plates. Daniel shot to his feet. "Victoria, stop this." "Sit down." My voice cut like glass, and for once, he obeyed. Slide after slide flashed across the screen. Photos, hotel receipts, emails. Anna in his jacket at the office. Daniel signing receipts with her name linked to guest services. The audience shifted, whispers growing into a low roar. Anna's face drained of color. Daniel's fists clenched at his sides, sweat blooming at his temples. "Elena always told me to protect the family name," I said, turning to face the crowd. "But tell me, what's worth protecting? A husband who vowed to love me while sharing a bed with my best friend? A maid of honor who toasted me with champagne before meeting him in hotel rooms? Or a mother-in-law who whispered the truth on my wedding day, not out of loyalty, but because she enjoys control?" Elena's pearl-clad hand flew to her chest. Murmurs spread. The perfect Sharapova image was cracking, and everyone could see it. But I wasn't finished. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about annihilation. "Of course," I continued, voice steady, "betrayal doesn't stop at broken vows. Daniel isn't only dishonest at home. He's dishonest at work, too." A new slide filled the wall. Client billing statements. Thousands of dollars charged on days he was with Anna. Fraud. Undeniable and time-stamped. Gasps turned into outrage. Several partners from his firm were in the audience, their faces contorting in shock and fury. One man, his senior partner, shoved back his chair and muttered, "Jesus Christ." Daniel lurched forward, voice cracking. "This is slander. You have no idea what you're doing." But the evidence spoke louder than his rage. Finally, I shifted to Elena. She sat frozen, pearls trembling at her throat, her carefully composed mask slipping. "Elena," I said, locking eyes with her, "you told me to keep quiet, to play this correctly so no one would ever know. You were right about one thing. Appearances matter. And tonight, the world gets to see what this family really looks like." The crowd turned toward her. Judgmental stares, snickers, phones lifted, recording, ensuring this humiliation would live forever. For a woman who lived to control the narrative, this was worse than death. The room buzzed, chaos building, Daniel shouting over the noise, Anna sobbing into her hands, Elena stone still. I raised my hand, silencing them. "There's one more thing," I said softly. The final slide appeared, a scanned copy of our marriage license. At the bottom, blank, my signature missing. I turned toward Daniel, my smile sharp. "We're not married. You thought you made me your wife. But legally, I'm nothing to you. Which means when your firm cuts ties, when your father disowns you, when the city whispers about your downfall, I won't be the wife standing beside you. I'll be free. Silence. Then an explosion of voices. Daniel's face twisted, horror dawning as he realized what it meant. No legal wife meant no claim to me, no spousal support, no binding tie. The empire he thought he'd built with me as his ornament crumbled in an instant. Anna bolted from her chair, fleeing the room. Her reputation shattered, her family following her out in shame. Elena slumped against her seat, eyes glazed, pearls slipping through her fingers. And Daniel. Daniel stood alone, the crowd closing in, his career in flames, his family in ruins, his marriage revealed as a fraud. I placed the microphone back on its stand, the weight of silence falling heavy before applause broke. Not polite applause, but the kind that erupts when an audience witnesses a performance so ruthless they can't look away. I walked out through the ballroom doors, my gown trailing behind me, cameras flashing like lightning. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt whole. Not because I had healed, but because I had won. And behind me, the Sharapovas burned. The morning after the gala, Chicago was buzzing. Every newspaper, every blog, every gossip column had the same headline splashed across their feeds: the Sharapova scandal. Screenshots of the texts, the billing fraud, the unsigned marriage license, all of it had gone viral overnight. The city that once whispered Daniel's name with respect now spit it out with contempt. I sat by the window of my condo, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise stretch over Lake Michigan. My phone vibrated endlessly. Calls, texts, voicemails. But I didn't answer. Not to Daniel, not to Anna, not to Elena. They were ghosts to me now, their voices irrelevant. By noon, his firm issued a statement. Effective immediately, Daniel Sharapova is no longer employed. They cited serious ethical violations. Rumors of disbarment swirled within hours. I imagined him in his office, colleagues avoiding his gaze, partners demanding answers. For a man who thrived on power, who lived for polished appearances, losing his career wasn't just a blow. It was a death sentence. That night, a mutual friend texted me a photo. Daniel outside a bar, hair disheveled, his tie gone, his face sunken. Alone. The man who once commanded courtrooms couldn't even command a drink without trembling. Anna's downfall was swifter. Her family, once so proud of her loyalty, cut her off entirely. Her employer found out through the viral texts. The CEO's wife happened to be at the gala and had watched it unfold live. By the next morning, Anna was unemployed. The last I heard, she moved out of her condo, crashing at a cousin's place in the suburbs. The woman who once posted filtered selfies of brunches and rooftop cocktails had vanished from social media. Silence replaced her curated smiles. I didn't need to chase her. The world did it for me. But Elena's humiliation was the crown jewel. For decades, she had curated an image of flawless society grace. Her galas were her throne, her pearls, her crown. After the scandal, donors pulled their support. The charity board voted her out within a week. I saw her once, weeks later, in a cafe on the north side. She wasn't in pearls. She wasn't surrounded by admirers. She sat alone, staring at her untouched tea, her back hunched, her power gone. When our eyes met across the room, she flinched, not from hatred, but from recognition. She knew she'd lost. I left without a word. That was enough. Through it all, I remained quiet. I didn't give interviews. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. The evidence had spoken for me. The silence made me untouchable. While they crumbled under scrutiny, I glided above it. Invitations poured in from women's groups, legal networks, even news anchors wanting my story. I declined them all. Because this wasn't about fame. It was about satisfaction. Weeks later, a courier delivered a package to my door. No return address. Inside was a velvet jewelry box. I opened it cautiously, and there it was. The engagement ring Daniel had slipped on my finger the night he proposed. But inside the band, hidden beneath the engraving, was something new. A slip of folded paper. I unfolded it slowly, my pulse quickening. It was a bank receipt, not one of Daniel's, one of Elena's. A transfer, months earlier. Thousands of dollars wired directly to Anna. My breath caught. The implications were clear. Elena hadn't just known about the affair, she had funded it. Paid Anna off to keep Daniel satisfied, to keep him tethered, to keep me in place as the perfect, docile wife while he lived a double life. This wasn't just betrayal. It was orchestration. Elena had been pulling the strings all along. The room tilted, rage surging fresh and raw. My revenge had destroyed them. Yes. But the realization burned. I hadn't just been betrayed by a husband and a best friend. I had been pawned in a game designed by a woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to control. I slipped the receipt back into the box and closed it. I could have destroyed Elena all over again with this revelation. But I didn't. Not yet. Because true revenge isn't always about the strike. Sometimes it's about the shadow it leaves. And I knew Elena lived now in fear. Fear of what I might do with the secret she could no longer bury. That fear was enough. I set the velvet box on the table beside my coffee and looked out over the city. The skyline glimmered, alive with 1,000 lights. Chicago was mine again, clean, sharp, and free. Daniel had nothing. Anna was no one. Elena lived in ruins. And me? I wasn't healed. Healing was never the point. I was victorious. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to smile. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If it struck a chord with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts or even a personal experience you'd like to share. Just drop it in the comments below. Your stories make this community stronger. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next tale. Until then, take care of yourselves. And remember, justice always finds its way.